Welcome to the 11th week of this year's In Times Like These recap. Now, let's get into this. Starting with our favorite dealer, Zeke Franklin, who is approached by his ex, Nichelle Torres, who asks him how he's not been arrested, asking him if he sold substances to Max Russo. Zeke tells Nichelle how it seems like she already knows the answer, wondering what she expects from him. Nichelle asks Zeke if he's regretted what he's done since Max overdosed. He replies that he's not some monster who wants to see people lose their lives. But Nichelle reminds Zeke how dealing could cost people their lives. After he asks Nichelle what she wants from him, she questions if dealing is something he truly sees in his future. Zeke answers that it doesn't matter what he thinks, since she wants no part in his future, then walks away. At the hospital, Heidi and Johnny Russo inform their son Max how they're sending him to rehab, which Max is not happy about at all. Max expresses that he doesn't have an issue with substances, but since he took Trank, which is highly addictive, they refuse to take any chances. At J. Dorval HVAC Services, Shelley Dorval tells her husband Jeremiah how quiet Devontae seemed after Jeremiah's interview with Quinlan, insinuating that Devontae terrorized them. Devontae walks into their business, ranting about Jeremiah's interview, asking Jeremiah why he would assume that he wouldn't retaliate. Unbothered by Devontae's frustration, Jeremiah answers that he's more prepared if Devontae decides to retaliate. Shelley demands that Devontae leave. After Devontae is gone, Shelley pleads with Jeremiah not to go to war with Devontae. Jeremiah assures his wife that this is a war that God will help them win. At Russo Jewelers, in Isidore Russo's office, Alan tells his father how he plans to wreck Theodosius's palace by throwing a wild spring break party on the hotel's beachfront. Isidore is ecstatic at the idea, knowing that it will influence the hotel guests to flee. Suddenly, Isidore gets a call from Udell Mitchell. Udell tells Isidore that he has an offer which he can't refuse. Isidore meets with Udell at Mitchell Law, asking Udell what he has to do in order to get his and Alan's Russo Jewelers shares back. Udell tells Isidore how he needs to get Heidi to back off. Udell goes on to say that if Isidore doesn't accept his request, then he and Wanda can reveal to the Russos that they are shareholders of Russo Jewelers. Adaku Danjuma meets Devontae at Theodosius's palace, where he asks her if she's trying to sabotage him in order to obtain the hotel, after allowing Quinlan Franklin to interview Jeremiah. Adaku plays innocent, telling Devontae that his issue is with Quinlan and Jeremiah, advising him that he needs to know the difference between his friends and his enemies. As she walks off, Devontae tells himself how he knows who his enemies are, promising to make them face his wrath. Meeting Ronnie at the street corner, Zeke claims that he's been sick, but Ronnie questions if Zeke has been ignoring him after news broke out of Max's overdose. Ronnie goes on to ask Zach how many substances Max bought off of him. When Zach answers that Max bought several, Ronnie gets angry, asking Zach what he was thinking. Zeke answers that he didn't expect Max to overdose. This is when Ronnie reveals that the substances are laced with something, admitting that they're laced with Trank, shocking Zeke. Upon hearing about the fact that they're selling substances laced with Trank, Zeke is uneasy about it, as Ronnie tells him to get over it and keep making money. Max hears the door open, but without seeing who walked in, he tells the person that he's trying to go to sleep. Vanessa asks if she can have a word before he does so. She goes on to ask Max how he's been. Max answers, then apologizes for making her and JJ find him, and he expresses how surprised he is that she showed up and isn't scolding him for taking substances and trying to take his life. She tells Max how she won't scold him, especially when she realizes that he was struggling and felt alone, informing him that she knows that Yvette lied about Max, forcing himself on her, apologizing for not believing him. Max tells Vanessa that saying sorry won't erase the past, his pain, and that he's going away. When Vanessa asks him where he's going, he tells Vanessa that he'll be going to rehab. When Vanessa questions if he has an issue with substances, Max explains that he's going since his parents don't want him to end up like his older brother. Vanessa apologizes once again, but Max, heartbroken, tells Vanessa to leave. As they're in separate rooms, Max sobs as Vanessa weeps. Heidi walks into the Russo estate with Clarice. As soon as Gianni asks his wife what she's doing at the estate, Clarice informs them how she invited Heidi to move back in. Gianni is displeased to hear the news, and Heidi informs him that she is just as surprised as he is. He goes on to ask if Zeke has been charged for selling substances to Max. Heidi informs her husband that Zeke is paying for what he's done to their son. Frustrated, Gianni asks Heidi what that's supposed to mean. Since she can't tell him that Zeke is an informant, Heidi asks Gianni to trust her. When he walks away, Isidore approaches Heidi, telling her how he'd like to help her get back at the Mitchells. Finnegan arrives at the Burke house just as Terry is about to head to work, asking her about her relationship with Devante, worrying how it could affect their son Keeve, since she can't tell him that she's only pretending to be friends with Devante in order to get intel for Devante. She tells Finnegan how she'll stand by Devante's side since he hasn't been convicted of taking Elvira Russo's life yet. When Finnegan is in his office, he calls his lover and lawyer, Harley Drake, to inform that they're able to use something against Terry in court. Quinlan hears a knock at the door and is troubled to find that she answered it for Devante. He goes on to intimidate her as she fights to make a brave face. Devante pretty much warns Quinlan that going after him would be a huge mistake since he's a powerful and dangerous man, leaving Quinlan shaken up. Keeve catches up with JJ at the high school, telling his friend how he hasn't told him much about how he found Max. JJ answers he doesn't want to talk about it, especially when that didn't have to happen, when Yvette lied about him and other people kept giving Max a hard time. As soon as Keeve claims that he hopes Max gets the help he needs when he goes to rehab, JJ asks him how he knows about that. Before Keeve has the chance to answer, Yvette approaches them. JJ asks Keeve to let him speak with Yvette alone. As soon as Keeve leaves, JJ tells Yvette that he hopes that she's willing to tell the truth about Max. Instead, Yvette tells JJ how she wants him to know that she wasn't trying to take advantage of his kindness. Annoyed, he tells Yvette how that's exactly what she did, wondering if his mental illness made him an easy target. Yvette denies this, but JJ tells Yvette that he can't be friends with someone he can't trust, walking off from her. In the bathroom, JJ flashes back to Max's overdose and Yvette's lies, then decides to get rid of his medicine, since things haven't gotten better but worse. Lorenzo and Clarice are outside of Max's hospital room as she expresses how much it hurts to see their grandson in pain. Suddenly, Vivian appears and comes face to face with Clarice, who has no idea that she's come face to face with her husband's illegitimate daughter. Lorenzo expresses his gratitude for Vivian showing her support. Then Clarice tells Vivian how familiar she seems. Since the two of them haven't met each other before, Vivian tells Clarice that she doesn't know how that's possible, even though she does. Unbeknownst to Lorenzo, there's tension between the two women, and Vivian walks off, calling Clarice a bougie hoe under her breath. At the high school, Yulisa points out to Vanessa how she never explained to her what the visit with Max was like. Vanessa tells her best friend how she was too ashamed to speak about it. Vanessa informs her friend that Max was cold towards her, expressing how she kind of understands how Max felt when she was cold towards him. As soon as Yulisa tries to assure Vanessa that it was the hurt talking, Vanessa tells Yulisa how the Bible talks about what someone says out of the mouth comes from the heart. Yulisa reminds Vanessa that she hoped that Vanessa wouldn't beat herself up over it. Vanessa tells her best friend that she can't help herself, thinking about what could have happened if she would have only believed Max and stood by his side. Yulisa tells Vanessa that she's not doing herself any favors by wondering about the what-ifs, telling Vanessa that God can use Max being in rehab for good. She goes on to tell Vanessa that she'll gift Max with a Bible that he can read during his time there, and that she'll pray he reads and gives his life to Christ. After Heidi asks Isidore how he plans to help her get revenge on the Mitchells, he tells her that she needs to back off, which confuses her. Isidore explains that since the Mitchells are ready for a fight, then they need to go after them when they least expect it. After Heidi tells Isidore how she sees his point, she asks her brother-in-law how they'll get Yvette to confess. Isidore begins to tell Heidi how they need to get someone close enough to the Mitchells to get a confession out of Yvette, wondering if she has anyone in mind. She answers that she does. Heidi makes a call to Owen Grant, and when he answers, she tells the assistant district attorney that he can inform the Mitchells that she won't be pursuing charges against Yvette Mitchell for her lies. Owen begins to ask why she can't tell them herself, disgusted by the fact that she would pursue charges against Yvette. The answer that Heidi gives is that they could use an answer from a friend. Pacho tells Devante how they really need to consider how to handle spring break, which Devante tells his son not to worry about. As soon as Pacho gets a call, he tells Devante that he'll have to take it. Once Pacho answers Quinlan's call, she tells him how Devante is unhinged. She informs Pacho about Devante's threats against her and that they need to change their plan by exposing Adaku as a crime boss and exposing Devante's association with her. As soon as Quinlan makes this suggestion, Pacho hears something break. Pacho meets with his father, who hears about an unexpected party at the beachfront. As they rush over to the beach, they see Alan partying along the spring breakers. Can't get enough of the crazy world of In Times Like These? Then, treat yourself to a binge watch of In Times Like These. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You're not ready for what's to come, but tune in anyway.